There's some dog breeds that now are usually delivered by cesarean section because of the mismatch between the offspring and the birth canal of the parents, for example. So it is true that artificial breeds are sometimes selected for traits that would reduce their overall viability, which actually is a great transition into what we're going to talk about in the next section. So I think thanks for all the questions, and we'll start the next section, because in the next section we're going to talk about selection under a full range of fitness constraints in the wild. Okay, so in nature, there isn't a human there helping you along to be born or to serve you a particular kind of food. You really have to be fit and more fit than anybody else in order to survive and adapt. And that brings us back to Darwin's key analogy. He knew that artificial breeders had been able to achieve major changes in body form by selective breeding, and he argued that natural species would also be able to change in dramatic ways, and that natural selection would be able to transform wild plants and animals based on differences in fitness. So for the rest of the talk, I'd like to focus on evolution not in human cornfields or in dog kennels, but evolution subject to a full range of fitness constraints in natural environments. And to introduce the organism that we'll be talking about, I have a short video. This actually is an actual episode of Jeopardy that aired 2 or 3 weeks ago.
This is Jeopardy! And now, Alex Trebek.
He's looking at me like I'm weird because we're going into Double Jeopardy with these categories. These are going to be fun. World capitals, followed by movies to the max. Almost assassinated. American women. Furred, feathered, finned.
And finish the category 2000.
It may ring a bell that this capital of Belize also starts with Bell, B-E-L. John.
What is Belmopan?
Belmopan, that's right.
Let's try furred, feathered fin for 400, please.
The brown type of this pouched bird plunges from the air to fish. The white one scoops up fish as it swims. John.
What's a pelican?
Right.
Furred for 2000.
The dorsal spines give this fish seen here its name. And it is a stickleback fish. John.
Okay, now I got to ask you guys, how many of you would have known the pelican? How many of you would have known the capital of Belize? You should get a T-shirt. How many of you would have known the three-spined stickleback? A few. Okay, so let's talk more about this small fish that's now famous enough to have actually made it onto Jeopardy. But on the other hand, was the $2,000 rather than the $400 question on Jeopardy, and was obscure enough that it stumped all of the contestants, even the ones who knew the capital of Belize. Okay, so this stickleback is a small fish. The ancestral form is found in oceans, about 3 inches long. Sticklebacks, although they live in oceans, are like salmon. So they migrate into freshwater streams every year to spawn. So these ocean fish are constantly migrating and probing freshwater environments along the coast. That lifestyle has been key to an enormous evolutionary radiation of the fish that actually plays upon one of the factors that Sean mentioned in the first lecture, and that's the enormous environmental changes that have occurred in the Earth over time. What's shown in blue here are these huge ice sheets that used to cover North America during the time of the La Brea tar pits, for example, Ice Age animals that Sean was showing. So about 15,000 years ago, those large ice sheets started to melt, and that set off an evolutionary radiation that's summarized in the next environmental video. Okay, so during the Ice Age, these huge sheets covering lots of land mass, ice was incredibly thick, so mile-wide thicknesses of ice piled on top of land, and then the Earth starts to warm. So widespread melting of those ice sheets begins, and the glaciers recede, leaving in their wake environments that used to be completely buried under ice, but are now exposed. And if you go into areas like, for example, around British Columbia, you'll find that the islands around Vancouver are dotted with freshwater post-glacial lakes covered in these formerly ice-covered regions. Those freshwater lakes, if you look in them, very frequently have sticklebacks that have come in from the ocean but then adapted to the local environmental conditions in the lake. That adaptation includes decisions about how to avoid predators. This shows a trout trying to eat a stickleback. You can see the sticklebacks sometimes get away, so the armor that they have can be very useful. Sticklebacks are also eaten by insects. The preying strategy of an insect is actually to reach out and grab onto things like spines of sticklebacks, reel them in, and then munch them from the sides. So depending on the kinds of predators that you're encountering in different lakes, it may be better or worse to have or to lose armor. That's just one example of the kinds of environmental factors set off by this widespread change in climate, but then an adaptive radiation as an ancestral marine form colonizes and evolves to the ecological conditions in different lakes. So the ancestral marine fish is shown here. They're not usually this red. This fish has actually been stained with a dye called alizarin red, which highlights all of the skeletal structures. The marine fish, completely covered with armor plates from head to tail. It has the 3 prominent spines that Alex Trebek mentioned. You can also see a spine down here on the belly region that we'll come back to. That ancestral form has radiated in different freshwater lakes and streams throughout the northern hemisphere, Europe and North America and Asia. When naturalists first came through the lakes of the northern hemisphere, they found what they classified as over 40 different species of sticklebacks because they look so different from each other. So in these freshwater lakes, the 3-spine stickleback can turn into a 2-spine, a 1-spine, or a no-spine stickleback. The teeth and the jaws are extensively modified as the fish adapt to different food sources that are available in particular environments. The armor patterns change a lot. You can be heavily armored and slow or lightly armored and fast. The hind limb of the fish comes and goes. Colors, a variety of physiological traits, salinity tolerance, temperature preference, it all depends on what environmental challenges the fish have been trying to reach. All of this has happened in just the last 10,000 years or so since these environments got created. And in fact, although many of the fish are reproductively isolated in the wild, the isolating mechanisms turn out to usually be either behavioral or mechanical incompatibilities. So you can overcome those by squeezing out eggs and sperm from the fish, and you can raise perfectly fertile F1 hybrids that can then be used for exactly the sort of genetic experiment that we've gone through before for teosinte and corn to try to track down the genetic basis now of evolutionary change in natural populations subject to a full range of fitness constraints in the wild. All kinds of interesting traits that are analyzable by this sort of approach, and that's because of the incredible diversity of different traits that have evolved in wild sticklebacks. There's actually a huge literature on sticklebacks, a couple of thousand papers and several full-length textbooks that have been written on the distribution and the ecology and the morphology and the behavior of different fish forms around the world. So it's possible to take almost any trait that you're interested in and find interesting stickleback populations. We and many other stickleback labs send out students and postdocs from the lab each year to go collect from interesting sites where fish have evolved. This is a graduate student lab shown collecting sticklebacks in the Northwest Territories. The fish are relatively easy to catch. You throw in these minnow buckets that have conical openings at the end. The fish get funneled in to the trap, and then the hole is small enough that, or they're not smart enough to swim back out the other side. So if you trap a whole bunch of lakes and streams, you can just come back the next day, and their traps typically are got lots of sticklebacks in them. The fish are small and relatively easy to move around and work with in different aquatic environments. You can see here buckets of fish that have been brought back to a hotel room in the Northwest Territories. It's actually possible to set up fertilizations and crosses under the microscope right there in the hotel rooms and bring back fertilized egg clutches. We also bring back live fish. We're also collaborating with lots of stickleback investigators that are interested in particular populations and have studied them for years, including a long-standing collaboration with Dolph Schluter at the University of British Columbia, who raises